Hey, Bry.
Hey, Craig.
How are you?
Good. How's it going?
Good. Randy, I think, is going to join us today. Bryson is was in my band, our band, Amdal Wolf, as is Randy Deitch. And I've got a little surprise for you, Bryson,
Oh,
at the very beginning. All right, a few more seconds and we'll start. And Ken is going to have this record on our new YouTube channel, which he set up. So by the way, Ken is our new chair for Heartland Renewable Energy Society. Wave, Ken. There we go. Hey. And he's done a lot with the website and with the YouTube, setting up YouTube and getting us more accessible to more people. Today's presentation is going to be lots of slides of homes and concepts. And we started out, or I started out back in 1978 when I was playing in a group called Amdal Wolf. And we used to do lots of original music. We were unusual in that way. And that original music is what really gave me my self-education on philosophy. And a lot of the slides are going to be of the first house I ever built, which is Wolf, I call Wolf 1, in case you're wondering where that phrase came from. And so as I was building the house, two things happened. My band broke up, Amdal Wolf, and with Gary Amdal. He and I started as a duo, and then we became a five-piece group. And my builder became unreliable. So as fate would have it, I started a new career before I knew I needed one. Because from building my own house, I went off and became a passive and super insulated home builder. And that ride lasted about a decade, a little bit more than a decade. So what I wanted to start with is a chorus and a verse of a song by Amdal Wolf that kind of explains with our original music where our hearts and minds were at. So I'm going to share my screen now, and we will go off and do that. And by the way, the song was co-written. Bryson Innes, who is with us here, wrote the music, and I wrote the lyrics. So, and that was the only song that we ever collaborated on, but in my opinion, it's the best song we ever did. So I'm going to share my screen now and begin the began.
Once again the earth is shaken. Once again our plan is taken. Nature now becomes our rival. And do we search for man's survival? We have but to look around us. We have let our greed surround us. Will we watch the throne with power lead us to a final hour? Where when lies the hope of man? When do we
Okay, so this is a friend of mine, and she and I were the financiers of this house, and then she later left, and she was replaced by Jamie Wolf, who has been a strong and lifelong partner. But she's standing right where my house was built, and behind her is the oak tree on the west side of the house that determined where we actually planted the house. That's the reason we planted the house there, because it provided shade on the west side. Here's Diana and Jim Huddleston. And Jim was the one who encouraged me to do something, because originally I had just designed an L-shaped log house, and he said, well, with your philosophy and priorities, you ought to do something different. And with that, I began studying and learning about passive solar and super insulation, but mostly passive solar in those days, trying to figure out the difference between active and passive solar. So there was a gentleman by the name of Wayne Nichols, who was a passive solar home builder in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And he's the grandson of J.C. Nichols. So we decided that we were going to go down and visit him. And that began a road trip to Santa Fe. We took a vacation and went down there, stopped by Telluride, Colorado. So this is me in my better days. But we met a guy named Doug Balcom, and he was living in one of Wayne Nichols' homes. And this is the home that we more or less cloned our house after, in terms of the concept of a two-story greenhouse. And that particular design has some problems, which because you can't shade the angled glass very well. So I use a shade cloth to do that, and did that from day one. So that was the point of that trip. And here we see the beginning of the house. This is a stake here by the surveyors, another stake here, and there's a stake back here. So we began, of course, with the excavation. I climbed up the oak tree to take this shot, and here's the excavation. This area here, as you will see later, this is where the greenhouse was. It has a raised patio in there. The house is actually a six-sided symmetrical house. I should have put a slide in there showing the outline of the house, but the back here is 40 feet, the front is 30 feet, and then you've got like 15 feet here, and then this is 20 feet here and here. So here they are, getting the footing in, poured the footing, and then here's the wall forms with the concrete curing. Wall forms are taken off, and here you can see the big oak tree, which we lost, by the way, and so we later replaced that with a sycamore tree that had a 6-foot root ball, so that we could have a giant tree on the west side of the house, and it is doing spectacularly. Whoop. Here's a picture of the foundation. There's my shadow. And here the carpenters have started. You can kind of see the shape of it. This area here is the greenhouse area. This is the kitchen. This is the entryway. Living room is right here. One of the bedrooms is over here. And the carpenters gave me the honor of pounding in the first spike. So there I am, doing my best to look like I know what I'm doing with a sledgehammer, pounding in the first spike. Here you can see the house beginning to take place. There's the downstairs bathroom right here. And some of the cedar timbers are being set up. So here you can see the inside of the logs. The builder that I was using didn't use any insulation on the inside of the logs, and so I had to change that. And I'll show you later on how I changed it so that we would have an R19 wall by the time you add in the insulation, as well as the R value of the logs, which isn't much. So here's the beams starting to take place that are going to form the greenhouse, and now you can kind of see what the place is going to look like. We've got the glass put in right here. And then another thing that I had to change is in his design, the builder's design, is just a 2x6 going up here. And so what I had to do was come back and add a 2x2 on all these so that we would have enough insulation to reach an R30. Here you can see some of the rigid insulation that's being put on the roof. And then a big snow that happened, which led to a lot of snow melting. And unfortunately, where all that snow went was right into the basement. This is the picture of the basement, and this is the low spot right here. And we had all of our furniture in the basement after the basement had the floor put in it, the concrete slab. So all the water was coming down here, and I was going crazy trying to keep the water out of our basement. So here is, and you can see the 2x2s right here that's scabbed on top of the 2x6s, and then here's the additional insulation here that was put in. So, and then I'm starting to add the 1x4s here. Then there's by the way, that little doghouse up there is for the attic fan. We have a vertically mounted attic fan that plays an integral part in the building of the home. And then here I am at the end of a day working on the roof. And right here on the lower right hand corner is the blue whale, which Bryson can remember from, because remember one time we were driving to a gig, and I was driving and it was in the snow, and I fell asleep at the wheel and woke up going 55 miles an hour in the median. And so he and I, after that, traded places, and he finished driving.
I remember that, yes.
Yeah. You do remember that. I figured you probably would. I certainly remember it. So here's the bare bones house, looking pretty good. And as you'll see later on, we've done a lot to the outside of the house to finish that up. Go away. And then here we are on the inside of the house. You can see the vaulted ceilings, the cedar beams that are the structural component of it. And here's another view of the ceiling. So the ceiling and the roof were one of the spectacular aspects of the home. So this is the bedroom. Now what I'm going to do, I ripped down 2x6s and put them on 4-foot centers, and then nailed them in edgewise so that they had a 3-inch or a nominal 3-inch, 2 3/4 actually. And then I put rigid insulation in between these ripped down 2x6s. And you can kind of see this is the edge of the house, and the carpenters came up with this idea so they wouldn't have to try and rip down 6-inch logs. They made this structure and then use the ends of the logs, and from the outside you can't tell any difference whatsoever this is not a full log right here. Here's the start of the fireplace. This is a Rumsford firebox, which has an angled back of the firebox, so as the fire goes up, it heats that angled part more and then causes more radiant heat out into the room. And here you can see right here and right here and right here are the 2x3s, if you want to call them that I use. And here you can see one of the sheets put in place that help create the R19 wall. And then here is a shot from the balcony loft area looking down, and you can see the 2x3s and the insulation that goes in between the 2x3s. And looking from the upstairs bathroom, you can see that the downstairs insulation is almost completely done. And this shot I had to adjust it, but that's why the photograph is of poor quality relative to the others, but still you can see Then what I did was to take tongue and groove rough cedar and put it over top of the 2x3s and the insulation, and that served as the inside of the house. Okay, so the house has lots of mass in it, and this is some of the mass being delivered, separating the greenhouse from the house is a mass wall of brick and stone and mortar. And there's the brick, which I was lucky to find a dark brick. They had just enough of it, and that served as the inside of the mass wall, inside to the greenhouse, if you will, so that the sun hit that dark brick to absorb more of the sun's energy. And here we are looking down at it all. This is Bob Zihusky. He's the one who came up with the fireplace Rumsford concept. He's getting ready to put the first stone in. And for Ken and Tess, he's the guy who came up with the idea. And he said, would you mind if I would put above the loft greenhouse door Namaste, which one of the interpretations of that word is I see your soul. So he was kind of a spiritual guy, did a great job on the stonework, just unbelievable. And so here's the wall going up. It serves as the thermal mass for the home, with the dark brick on the sun side and the stone on the inside. Looking at it from that same shot from the inside. And then here you can see a cross section of the wall where we had brick on the outside, and then the brick layers also filled those voids with mortar as they were going up. And then here's a shot of the inside of the house in one of its iterations of furniture. And there's Speaker up here, which is my first dog, a little Rottweiler, and he was a great dog. And then here is the inside completed, and you may not be able to see it. If we have a better shot of it, I'll show you. But up here, the brick only went so high. It didn't go all the way up to the ceiling in the loft in the greenhouse area, because at 12 o'clock noon on December 21st, when the sun is its lowest in the sky, that sun line is right along the top of the brick. We also use 55-gallon drums initially in the greenhouse to add additional storage filled with water, but but Jamie said, gee, that's not very attractive. So she won that round, and we took those out eventually after several years and put in plant shelves, which I think you'll see later on. So here's the wall. It's a 16-inch thick wall. There's heat will travel through masonry material, and from the sun's energy from hitting the wall to reaching the other side is about 9 to 12 hours in terms of the speed of that conduction through the house. So the theory goes that the sun will hit that mass wall, and then 9 hours later will reach the inside of the house. And the function of mass is to store the sun's energy. But there's another element regarding the sun's mass, is that if you can see that warm mass and it can see you, then you can feel more comfortable at lower air temperatures. Same thing goes with a wood burning stove or a fireplace. If you can tolerate lower temperatures because of all that radiant heat hitting your body from a wood burning stove. Now this wall is kind of like little bitty wood burning stoves everywhere that is looking at you. And so you are able to tolerate lower air temperatures because of the radiant heat that's hitting your body. And here it is before the carpet went down, of showing the stone mass wall. And here is just a reminder of what the home looked like before, and here is where it ended up looking like after we got done with our gardening. Jamie and I called ourselves out of control gardeners. We ended up, and in fact, I think the buyers of our home Tess and Ken are on the phone or on the line here with us, and we ended up with 5,000 square feet of perennial gardens that covered the property, and I'll show some pictures of that, those gardens later on. So here's another shot of the thermal mass inside the house. This is what we can see, and it can see us and provides us with radiant heat. Here's another shot. You can see that the 55-gallon drums are placed with something that's a little bit more aesthetic with these plant shelves. Here's the other side of the greenhouse. So now we're going to just rifle through some outdoor shots of the gardens. Looking up the driveway, looking back toward the garage. This is at the on the east side, next to the little stone garage for the property next door. Looking up the driveway, looking down the sidewalk toward the front door. So I'm standing in the driveway looking toward the front door. This is in the backyard. You can see this thing going on the right-hand side. We call this a ground gutter, because what would happen if we get a gully washer, mud and stuff would overflow and get into the stone, pebbles, etc., and that became a pain in the neck to try and get cleaned up. So we created what we call a ground gutter to grab the water before it gets into that part of it. And here the ground gutter is looking up. Now, I don't know if I have a shot of the one on the other side, but there's a ground gutter right below here that also goes down. And this is in the backyard looking up at our deck. Our deck was a monstrous deck, about 1,200 square feet. Looking down toward let's see, go back. Where are you? Where am I? I don't know where that picture went, but that's okay. So here we are looking up the path. Oh, there it is. I don't know why I couldn't see it, but that's a shot of the deck and the lattice work that covers hides the inside of the deck. Looking down toward a little wood burning pit down here where you could have a fire. Oh, here you can see the ground gutter right here. This is the ground gutter on the other side of the backyard that takes water that comes off the roof and then down into this thing and then down into the woods. Here's the pit, the little burn pit down here. I remember one night I came out. It must have been a great year for fireflies, and I ran inside to grab Jamie to have her look at it. But the entire backyard at night was just aglow with fireflies. It was just a magical view. And there's our fountain, which we couldn't resist because it looks like the sun, and that's such a part of what is our philosophy of having the sun. So that's the fountain we selected. Here's looking at the front yard. This is called Hosta Row, looking down there at that. And here's the butterfly garden, or now we call it the Stonewall Garden because our little butterfly boxes didn't really work that well, so we call it the Stonewall Garden. Looking at the house from the Stonewall Garden and the sidewalk gardens. This is a look at the sitting garden, called a sitting garden because there's a chair behind these trees, and so its name's the sitting garden. Another shot of the fountain. And some shrimp plant, a shrimp plant. So all of that led to my starting a company called Craig Wolf Solar Design and Construction. And the home design that I named was the Energy One Concept Home. And so we're going to see some of the techniques that we used back in the day to build the Energy One concept homes under the name of Craig Wolf Solar Design and Construction. And I was a member of the Home Builders Association. I was kind of one of the rebels that pushed for energy savings programs. You can see these are a couple of guys from Kansas City Power and Light. There's Larry Gordon, who was a vendor for builders, and he sold us styrofoam insulation. This is Craig Iman, who was also a renowned solar builder. And we were both proud of what we did. So this is one of the slides that I would show a new client as we were introducing them. It's called a historical look at fossil fuel consumption. And what back in when this was in the 80s, what we were concerned about, at least I was concerned about back in those days, is we're going to run out of fossil fuels. So here we are about when they discovered oil, and here we are at the peak, and we're going to run out of fossil fuels. And that was the big concern why we had to do energy conservation and build passive solar homes, etc. Didn't turn out that way, because if we burn all of the oil that we can discover, we're going to kill ourselves through climate change. So we've got more than enough, as this curve actually flows out here, we've got more than enough fossil fuels. In fact, we've got way too many to burn. So, and I would always show my new potential clients the concept. So there's three types of solar design. This is called direct gain, where the sun's energy comes directly into the home, and this is diffused glass up here, so it breaks up the sun coming in. And I use it's called a clear story, and I use this a lot. And so this is a slab, hopefully with a masonry floor that collects the sun's energy and radiates it back to the inside of the house. Also, hopefully, if you've got a lot of glass on the south side, you use window quilts or some other insulation here, because that's your most vulnerable area for conductive losses now. And it is also what wasn't well known by many homes that try to do passive solar, is they've got too much glass and the home heats up too much. What that does is it creates highs and lows. So follow my mouse, and this is the nighttime, then it gets very hot in the daytime, and then it gets very cold at night, very hot in the daytime, very cold at night. And that's what thermal mass helps to do, is to level out and to act like a thermal flywheel for the home, to absorb the sun's energy and keep it from getting too hot, keep it from getting too cold. This is called an isolated gain home. That's what my home is. I've got a sun space that's not conditioned, and the sun hits this mass wall, and then slowly, after about 9 to 12 hours, conducts through the wall and then radiates to the inside of the home. And then there's also something called an indirect gain, and I built one of these with indirect gain. When you'll see some shots of it later on, where the glass is put right with a small airspace right up against the thermal mass wall. Then you also have to take in consideration the sun's angle in the sky. This shows the sun's path on June 21st, and on July 21st, and on August 21st, and then February 21st, January 21st, and December 21st. So ideally, you've got your overhangs designed properly so that it doesn't overheat in the summertime, that this overhang here keeps the home from having too much sun, it allows the sun to come underneath the overhang and into the home, and then it's long enough that it blocks the sun from entering that south glass in the rest of the year. And this shows the variance in the sun's path. Here's the summer sunrise rising north of due east, going high in 12 o'clock noon, setting north of due west, and then in the wintertime rising in the southeast and going and setting in the southwest, and low in the sky at 12 o'clock noon. So all of that goes to define your glass. So this was what I called the wolf wall, although I'm sure I wasn't the first person to think of it. But enemy number one is air infiltration. So I quickly learned in my building process that that was the animal that we really needed to address. So what I did was wrap the house in 6 mil poly. And so the technique was to put a bead of, this is rigid insulation on the outside of the foundation wall, to put a bead of caulk down here. You can see the bead of caulk here. Then we put poly into that with enough poly running wild that we could wrap that poly around here. And you can see right here we've cantilevered the plywood floor out an inch, because what we wanted to do was to keep the poly right here to be a warm surface. And you can see that with these one layer of rigid insulation here called Thermax, and that fits right here, and then the other layer of rigid insulation that goes up the entire wall on the outside that's flush with the rigid insulation here. You can see the poly going down here. You can see the poly that came starting at the foundation here, and you can see the poly on the inside here if we're ready to receive a wall that goes up. So then that poly then goes up the 2x4, but then we also added a 2x2 and put fiberglass insulation in this cavity. You can see, and we use this gap here for wiring and plumbing. You can see how that is configured here. And so here is the poly that started out at the foundation. It's come under the wall. Then we put in rigid insulation here, and then we put the 2x2s on and ran our wiring and plumbing. Again, you can see that shot. And then we added a thin layer of fiberglass on the inside of that. And so then here's the final wall. We use little strips of poly here and here and here to hold that fiberglass from falling out of the cavity. And then other areas of the house where we would reduce infiltration, where you have a ceiling light fixture that went to the outside, or went into the insulation and then to the outside, we would cut the poly slightly smaller than the dimension of that outlet box. Then we would wrap it around that, push it around that, so you had a tight fit of the poly against the box. Then we would finish by caulking that poly to the electrical box, as well as caulking with butyl caulk where the wires come into the box. And you can see that then we ran poly up this wall, up this vaulted ceiling or flat ceiling, as the case may be. And then we would run poly down the ceiling, and we would run the poly so it didn't run this direction, it ran this direction, so that we would have a vertical point where we put the sheetrock. It would be pressed against the butyl caulk and form to make sure that caulk stayed in place. And so that was the design of the wall system. And then of course in the attic you'd caulk any penetrations on the top and bottom where you had plumbing or electrical wiring that came down into the conditioned space. Then around the windows we would foam them with a non-expanding foam. We would caulk the poly that was on the wall to the last stud, creating the rough opening. And then this just shows what we've already talked about in terms of the angle of the sun and the angle, how that impacts the overhang in summer and winter. And here's a close-up of the running the poly with its seams running vertical up the vaulted ceiling as opposed to across. Now, because we took such care to make the house airtight, you've got all kinds of things that are outgassing in your house, cabinets, rugs, stuff that makes the air not healthy. So what we would do then is we'd use what we called back in the day an air-to-air heat exchanger. Now that they've got better devices, they call them an ERV, energy recovery ERV ventilator. But the function is the same in terms of how it treats air. You can bring in cold air from the outside. It runs through the heat exchanger and pulls off some of the heat from the warm air that's in a bathroom that's coming down and goes into the air-to-air heat exchanger. So if air here came in at 20 degrees, it probably comes into the return air duct at 55 degrees or 50 degrees. So in other words, it's a way of artificially inducing air or air infiltration. In a normal house, you got plenty of air infiltration, but it's coming in at 0 degrees or 20 degrees or whatever the outside temperature was. So it's an air-to-air heat exchanger. Your furnace uses an air-to-air heat exchanger so that you don't die when the furnace comes on. Your car uses a water-to-air heat exchanger so it cools down the water that cools down your motor. And there's what one looked like in one of our homes. Now I have this shot in here, and this will probably be on the website too if you want to read it, but this is the first home that I built using all these comp sets. It was the third home that I built in total, but it uses the wall system, etc. And I was friends enough with folks at Kansas City Power and Light that they used this home as a test case, requiring that the homeowners keep the house no cooler than 68 degrees or 70 degrees, whatever it was, and also that they not use their wood-burning stove for this winter of 1982, which was a cold winter. And they went through the entire winter on, I think, $114 of electrical baseboard heat, because that's all we would put in there was electrical baseboard heat, which is an expensive heat to pay for, but is a very cheap source of heat when you're installing it in the first place. And that's the equivalent to $55 of natural gas, or about $13.75 a month. So the theory proved out, and from then, that's what I used as my claim to fame to get clients until we didn't care about energy anymore, and Ronnie Reagan took the collectors off the roof, and people just lost interest in energy efficiency, and have for many decades. So here's another home that, oh no, this is the home right here in the wintertime. This is the Staggs residence, and this is the Brewer residence. They use the same design as the Staggs residence. The lower level is earth contact. You can see here on the back of the home. And we're going to have a little conversation about mass, because in the greenhouse, as you can see from these slides, we've got a greenhouse here on this side of the house. And so we're going to build some mass walls. So when we build these mass walls, you've got lots of concrete that's being poured in here that's causing lots of pressure that wants to collapse this box. This box is where the doors are going to go. So then we had the same thing on the upper floor, because the mass wall was a 2-story mass wall of 16 inches thick concrete. So the carpenters had to really make sure that when they built this, that it withstood the pressure, trying to collapse that opening for the doors. And then here is the same wall, showing the wall and the doors after it's been poured. Now the braces are taken out, and then here's the mass wall on the inside after the house has been finished and moved in. This is the same house, showing the mass floor in the part of the house that has direct gain. You can see the sun coming up here from above this. There's glass up above this beam. It's diffused glass, so it spreads the light out, and you can see the softness of the light here as compared to this light down here. Same light's coming in, it's just this light is more spread out. but this is the mass in the living room area. And here's, boy, I forget their names. Somebody will remind me later, but they're doing an air blower test here to measure the home's tightness and the air infiltration. And this just shows some of our techniques for pouring a slab, and that you don't here this slab, you want to be your thermal mass or your heat storage, and you don't want it being impacted by the outside. So we put that slab, when we poured it, with styrofoam insulation up against the outside wall, as well as going back about 4 feet on the inside. And then here you can see it right there, but we've got 2 inches of rigid insulation on the outside. We've got a little knee wall for the stoop here, and that is also covered with rigid insulation.
Hey, Craig.
An attic fan.
Craig.
And we put attic fans in our homes, and if someone wanted an attic fan, here was our technique. We used 2-inch styrofoam as a cork that we would take, and we take these blocks out. We had a little foam gasket on top. It's pushing up against that so that you had an airtight fit. This is a piano hinge here, and so you lift that up and it's in place. Put it on with some butterfly nuts to hold it in place, and now it's there for your winter use when it's not in use.
Ken was trying to say something.
Ken, are you trying to say something?
I think it was Ken.
Or someone was trying to say something?
That was me. Can you go back 2 slides?
Yeah.
Okay, a couple more, I guess.
Interrupt me. Don't wait for me to.
Well, back to the blower door.
The blower
One more,
door.
maybe.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, well, right there. We happen to have that blower door still.
Oh,
and the
you
guy
do.
that's running that test who you talked about, that's Court Crosby.
Court Crosby, and this is what's his name?
I don't recognize him.
Henry Temkin.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the guy from Aardvark Air,
Bruce.
Bruce. Can't bring it back. Anyway, yeah. So these guys were co-conspirators in terms of believing that what we were doing was important and the right thing back in the day, as was Bruce.
Yep, that's one of the original blower doors right there.
Yeah, right.
They've changed
there.
a lot since then.
So this is one of the homes I built. Now we're going to see some of the structures that Energy or the Craigwell Solar Design and Construction built. This is the south side of the house. This is the north side of the house. And then this is the inside. Again, I used the clear story. This was the mass that we used in this home. This was a spec home, so we didn't put carpeting down. That's a decision everybody has to make. Now, this is the home that has the indirect gain, which means that the glass is placed right up against the thermal mass. And that's on this side of the home here. And then over here is a little mini sun space. So we'll take a look at how that was done. So here's the thermal mass with the support for the glass lagged into the mass. And then we put a dark or a light covering over that, and then we painted that black, and then there it is after it's all been done. Now, Bruce, the guy from Aardvark Air, this is one of the things that probably isn't a very good idea, and we'll talk about that when we get later on today when we talk about heat pumps. But at the time, it was pretty innovative, in that he used the copper wire that holds the freon from the heat pump and wrapped that around here. And this white tubing is that once a week or so you turn on a faucet on the inside of the house, and that would put moisture out into the soil to make sure that the clay soils hadn't dried out and shrunk back away from the copper pipe. And we'll talk later on about why that's not a great system. Here's another home, used some earth contact on the back side. Back here, we'll see a shot of it, and we even put some earth contact on what is the west side. There it is, looking at the, here's that same earth berm that's on the west side. You can see some of the, whoop, you can see, get back. Yeah, you can see some of the earth berming here on the north side, and then also on the east side back here. Another shot. And here's the northeast corner. That is earth contact. And they used terracotta for their thermal mass inside the home. And then they also used window quilts from Appropriate Technology. I wish they were still around. They were a great company. They had a great product. And I put it in just about every home I built that changes the window from an R2 to an R5. And just as importantly, if you're sitting next to this open window on a 0-degree day, you feel cold because your body has a negative radiant relationship with that glass. And the same thing happens in the summertime. When I was putting up one of these window quilts on the south side, it was the overhang was protecting the glass from having the sun come in, but it was still 96 degrees outside. And I felt hot. When I got the window quilt to the point where I could lower it, my comfort level immediately increased because my body wasn't being bombarded by the radiant heat that the glass was reflecting into the room and onto my body. So window quilts were a great, great product. Another shot of the windows and the thermal mass. Another home that was a spec home. Thermal mass was the fireplace. Again, up here is the clear story with the fused glass up there, and then the thermal mass on the floor, and they had a very efficient Hearthstone wood burning stove. This is the another residence by the Myers residence. Earth contact on the backside. This is a Colonial Salt Box. They wanted a Colonial Salt Box, but they wanted a passive solar home, so I put the glass over here on the south side. And there's what that looked like on the south side. And then here's the inside of the home. They've got terracotta floors for thermal mass, and then a really nice big fireplace. Another home in Red Oak Hills. This is the north side, and then here's the south side of the home. So they had some levels down here that are earth contact. This is Julef residence, the north side, and the south side, a direct gain home. This is a home by Larry Lady, a log home using 12-inch. In this home, the logs were on the same log you see from the inside and the outside. So you've got about an R13 out of it. This is the south side of the home with more glass. It's a beautiful home. This is an earth contact home for the Hoffmans, showing it's all direct gain, kind of a multi-leveled home. Here's the north side showing the berm. Look, showing the south glass. This is the Kong's residence, which was an A-frame home. Of course, that's the south side. This is an office building that I built for Dr. Novak, showing the north side, and then the south side. Verhage residence. A couple of remodels. This is one where we added a greenhouse to the south side of the home. This shows the residence for the Haywards, and this is just an add-on remodel job. There it is before we added the room, and here it is after we added the room. You should see the big fireplace looking to the south. One of my projects that never got off the ground was something that I was very sad and disappointed that we couldn't complete. Is something called Sunwalk, which was a great name, a townhome solar village nestled in the woods. Here's a little display we had for a show that showed the features of the home. It shows the homes, or at least some of the homes, and their layout. So they were like, you've got 3 units here, 3 living units here, and you've got 2 living units here. But this was toward the end of Craig Wolf Solar Design and Construction, and people were beginning to forget and not care about energy in the late 80s, which is when this happened. Disappointing that never got off the ground. This shows insulation here for the foundation, and we also made this wall a freestanding retaining wall. Right here you can see the top of a thermal break that went down from here down to here, that kept this piece of concrete from getting cold and making this piece of concrete on the wall cold. This is a home that was built by the Stitt Construction, and this was back around 2008, which was not a great economic time, but Elmo, I think his name is, Stitt, had I'm sorry? Orlo, right, Elmo. Orlo Stitt. He started at about the same time I did. Apparently he was smarter than me because he kept building, whereas I had to retire from building. But nevertheless, these 4 projects were in Kansas City, and he needed someone to be construction management for those homes. And we're going to see some of the shots. And so this is one of those homes for the Ashleys. And the unique thing about this home is that it is all insulated concrete. So you've got an insulated concrete form that goes clear up from the foundation to the roof. And we'll see some shots of that. So this is the first pour of the concrete. This is getting ready for the 3rd pour, I believe. Go back. Up. And you can see that we first pour, or the 2nd pour, 3rd pour, and so we're getting ready to pour concrete inside these insulated forms. And they are, there you can see a good shot of the thickness of the forms. Here's the concrete being poured down. Here's the operator of the pumper truck, and he's there with his little remote puppy, and this is Mike Fisher, and he was directing him, saying, "Stop! Okay, go!" And so whatever he needed, this guy would listen and obey those commands. There's another day when we're doing the pour, different guy, different operator. This is Mike again, and here's the pipe, and here's the concrete right here being poured into that form. And you can see that these are specialized forms. They have little puppies in here that hold the rebar in place. And here's a good shot of the pumper truck pipe going way up in the air and then way down. And so there's Mike holding on for dear life as he's directing the concrete into the form. Now on the inside, this is the form on the upper level, and you can see that they carve out a spot to put outlets, and then they have a place on the form that allows a wire or plumbing run to be installed along that wall. Another shot showing the same thing, where the wires come in here and then runs along that little slot in the form and goes to the electrical box. This is the Schumann residence, and I should mention also that Shauna Zahner, on our board, who is a co-presenter, and she'll start chiming in a little more with Ken as we get into some of this stuff. But she was the designer, or did a lot of design work for Stitt Construction, and she and I worked together. She helped me with questions and stuff as we were doing the actual construction. So here's some outside shots. It was a really beautiful home, beautiful setting. Valerie Schumann was her name. We'll see a shot of her later on. Here's the front. Stitt did a lot of very, very nice work. The first home we saw from Stitt was kind of a plain Jane home. Let's call it an unusual buyer, that he had his ideas about how he wanted things done, and they were very simple and very plain. Most of the Stitt Energy projects were a little more creative than that one, like this one, the Schumann residence. Now, I'm showing the faucet here because they have something called an ice house roof. Is that the right name, Shauna? Ice house roof?
Yes, yes.
It sounded weird, but this is an open soffit area here. So you've got, in these grooves, you've got air, cool air can be sucked into this by this ice house roofing system. So here is what's going on the inside. It's got Stitt's name on it, and so this is a piece of cardboard, and on the edges is folded up about 3 inches, okay? So you take these pieces of cardboard that are folded up, and the fold goes up so that you can install these into the ceiling, but it leaves a gap between the roof, the shingle system, the plywood, and this cardboard. So the go ahead, Shauna.
The cardboard also has a radiant barrier reflecting heat back up on the other side of it. It reflects the heat back to the roof.
Yeah, very good
Roof
point.
space, that space that's created between the roof and the top of the cardboard.
And so that reflective surface reduces the heat by emissivity. And I don't need to, I probably am not smart enough to give you a good explanation of it, but if you have a roof that has foil in open air, it acts as insulation, if you will, because it reduces the emissivity of that heat. So the air starts down here at the soffit and goes up, and we'll see a little bit more later. It goes up to a ventilated roofing system. So here it is. So now they're putting the foam right on top of the cardboard. And this is the foam insulation that makes the house airtight. And right here is a shot of that ventilated roof. So way down here below, the air is coming up from the soffit, and it's coming up here to this ventilated
Ridge.
Thank you. Coming up to the ridge and letting the hot air out. So it was a pretty cool system. These guys are putting on a hot water system, but it just happened to be a good shot to show this little guy. Now, and here's another shot of their insulation. Here's the insulation, and when they put the insulation in, it is put in kind of running wild. So it'll kind of look like this, where you'll have it bubbling out. So what they do is they come back here with a 2-foot long blade with a handle on each end, and they just kind of like scrape it along, and they cut off that excess insulation. Pretty cool. And this is what, in my mind, is the best house technique now, is to use this type of foam construction. Here is again the foam that's been blown in the wall, and it's been shaved off, and we'll see another shot here, I hope, of before we foamed it, put the foam on. Yeah, here we go. So they used a 2x2 on a 2x4 wall, as I did, only they ran theirs horizontal, which is perfectly fine, probably a good idea. And then when they had an outlet, they would just nail a little 18-inch piece of 2x2 onto the 2x4 to bring it out, so that this electrical outlet right here can be flush with the sheetrock. So then they would put the foam in here and then take their 2-foot long blade and cut off the excess. Now,
Craig?
yeah,
Craig? Also, just to say, go back to that one slide, that last one. Also, just to say that Stitt used trusses extensively for the attic systems, for the roof systems.
yeah,
And the trusses had what's called a raised heel truss at every, it was a raised heel so that there was a space where the truss came down and sat on the exterior wall, so that when they went and did the spray foam, they had a substantial area of 8 to 12 inches or so where they could get the spray foam in, where
Yeah.
normally you can't, where the rafter comes down and sits right on a sidewall. This raised it up so they could get insulation in that area. So this spray foam went all the way from the sidewalls all the way up at the attic spaces, and even at the exterior walls where the trusses meet the top of the wall.
so the
So there
foam
was
actually
no-
went clear out
It was a
here.
continuous barrier.
Yeah,
And running the 2x2s horizontally reduces the thermal bridging from outside to inside, because the
Right.
wood will
Yeah.
have foam on top of it, and the 2x4s will have foam in front of it, and the 2x2s will have foam behind it. So the only place you have wood coming all the way through is where they intersect.
Right.
very good. Now, for those who don't know the answer, unmute yourselves as soon as you know what this guy is doing, what he's installing. So we are going to go through a series of slides, and if someone knows what this is all about, then unmute yourself and tell us. So this is Mike, and he's cleaning up this big long pipe. There is Valerie Schumann. She's observing what this guy is doing. It is digging a hole in the ground. Any takers yet?
No takers yet.
Oh, I know what he's pouring the base of the concrete base that's going to hold the rotating solar panel.
Ah,
Right.
and who was that just spoke?
Me, Shauna.
Oh,
I know what
Shauna,
it is.
You weren't supposed to tell.
Oh, I
You were
wasn't
gonna let
supposed to
the
tell. Okay.
uninitiated- Oh, you-
Sorry.
You blew the contest, Shauna.
Oh no.
Okay, so this is the hole that this pipe is going to go into. There it goes. And then they've got little standoffs to keep it in the center. And there it is. Getting it plumb. Pouring concrete in it. There's the concrete. There it is, getting leveled off. And here is what that looks like. This is a tracking panel of solar panels, a tracking system for solar panels. And you can see, if you notice the sun there, that it's perpendicular to the sun. And so it will angle back and forth as well as left to right to follow the sun in the sky, no matter what season it is.
Greg,
The mechanics.
is this an old ZomeWorks setup?
I don't know. Shauna,
Okay.
do you know?
I don't think it is. No.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the mechanics are, who produced them. I don't know.
Yeah, ZomeWorks was really into this in the very early days in the 80s and all in the 90s. I don't know when this was built, but then
Well,
they're
this
gone
was
now.
not. This was installed in like 2010.
Oh, they're
so-
gone. They're long gone. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's a good shot of the home as well as a good shot of the solar panels looking right at the sun. Now we're into homes built by others, just to show examples of a concept, and you'll hear Shauna and Ken and maybe even Charla pipe in with their intelligence about why some of these things are a good idea and why some of these things are a bad idea. So this is an earth contact or an earth bermed home, which means that the earth is against the sides of the home, they are typically one level unless they've got another level going up here higher. Although sometimes they had to build structures that, like the Hoffman residence, which was that one that had multi-tiered. They had a 2-story back wall, and they braced it with a 2-foot by 2-foot concrete beam that went all along the back of the house to keep it from bowing in. So anyway, this is an earth bermed house. Here's another earth contact, or not earth contact, but an earth sheltered home, which means that you've got earth on the roof. You won't see that in Johnson County.
It doesn't. That doesn't even look like it's in this country.
No, it's probably not.
Where are
Probably
the
not. It's in New Zealand.
Yeah, I would say it has to probably be New Zealand, Australia.
Yeah. And then here's more of what you would typically find in the United States for an earth berm home. There was a company called Terradome, I believe it was, that used to do.
Out of Independence, Missouri.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ken and Shauna, do you have any comments about the pluses and minuses with these homes?
Well, their biggest downfall and their biggest problems were trying to keep water infiltration out. It's just like it's very hard to keep the moisture out of these homes, and eventually the moisture seeped through and then destroyed the structure beneath it. So I knew a person who built one in Freeman, Missouri, and they eventually, after about, she said it only took about 10, 12 years, and they had to take all the sheltering, all the dirt off of the roof and then redo all the roof because it was leaking too much. So to do these homes, or to do them properly, even earth contact homes, let alone earth sheltered homes, if the waterproofing on that back wall or any of the isn't done correctly, or it's just very hard, very difficult to get the water infiltration to stay low. So.
And the structural costs, and I think when the three of us were talking about these slides, you said, and they all smell like an old shoe. And
the caveat there
is that of all the earth contact homes, I never did an earth sheltered home, but of all the earth contact homes, I never had one person get back to me with a problem. So apparently we were using the right product.
If they put in heat recovery or energy recovery ventilators in these earth covered homes, your underground homes, that does help.
Yeah.
Because it's a moisture problem, which I'm saying moisture gets in there. Anywhere moisture can come in, it'll come in. It's very much anything that can leak will leak. And so if water gets in there at all, of course, it causes mildew, mold, and all that, and then you smell it. So anyway.
Yeah.
This is John Hen. What's the can you explain the value of the dirt against the wall? What's the insulation value, or what?
Well, there is an insulation value in that the earth at a depth of, and I may have the numbers a little bit wrong, but there's a lag time associated with the temperature of the earth. So the earth is its warmest at 8 feet in the fall or the early winter sometime. So it still is a warm area, and then it's its coldest in the late spring, early summer, at that depth of 6 to 8 feet. So that's one of the benefits. The other benefit is there ain't no way any air infiltration is going to get into this home. And so I'd say that the lag time associated with the temperature of the earth, as well as no air infiltration, are probably the two biggest aspects of why these homes were built in the first place. Sean or Ken, do you have any other thoughts about that?
They also had a big sales point in that it's almost impossible for a tornado to damage this home because the way the shaped and everything, unless it hits in the front, breaks the glass. But normally homes are destroyed because tornadoes go over and they basically have a lifting action. And a typically built home, it just sucks it inward and up. Well, when you have an earth covered home, it tends to just skim over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. And before we had all these great foam, spray foams available, this was a great way to insulate, really well insulate around 3 sides of the house. So,
Yeah.
And of course, you can grow food on it. There's some other aspects that's like sales points. You could grow edible plants on top of your house and all that. Not too many people do, but I mean, that's in your brochures probably.
Yeah.
on the negative side, real estate agents hated them, and they still hate them. So keep that in mind.
Now, real estate agents don't really like anything they don't understand completely, and so
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Was the real estate, was that because they just couldn't sell them, or did
They just didn't understand them, and didn't know how to sell them.
Right.
That was what the problem was.
And that's the
I knew
case with
also
any.
they'd have a specific buyer. You have homes that are typical homes. They figure almost anybody who walks in the door is probably interested. People that walk in the doors of underground homes or unusual homes you have to find that specific type of buyer that's interested in that specific type of home. And so they know that it's more of a needle in a haystack than it is just, fortuitous who walks in the door. They might be able to sell them. They know they can't do that unless they get a very specific buyer for these houses.
Yeah.
pretty
And-
limited market then?
It is.
Yeah.
It is the case with any energy efficient home that, God help you, if you're a builder building an energy efficient home and you don't have a real estate agent who at least is interested in learning about them, and then learn about them enough that they can sell the features. And that
Right.
is true with any home, including my homes that I built, but certainly with an earth sheltered home where, it takes a unique buyer. You didn't build these things in a subdivision.
No.
And,
They're always by themselves.
yeah.
Well, I've actually got a subdivision out of them out by me, out by Weatherby. There's a little area that has there's actually 2 areas that have a whole bunch of them all together. It's really amazing.
That's kind of unusual.
Yeah.
I will, since we're talking about comparing old versus new, which is the point of your conversation, part of it, we do live in a time now that homes like this, and this more or less, I don't know if underground homes will ever become big time, in vogue, because there's other ways to make homes super efficient now. But if you have a home that's innovative, we live in a time where you could make a home where you walk in the door, a motion sensor starts explaining to you the features of this home, so that a real estate agent could know nothing about the home, and they could just let people walk around, and as they enter a room, a voice or a computer screen will come on and say, you're looking at this, and you're looking at a smart thermostat, and you're looking at the whatever it happens to be, and the house can explain itself.
Yeah.
Good
Well,
point,
I
Ken.
thought of that would be
That would be great.
fantastic way of selling them.
That's what I would like to help people do. And my way of doing this, I would like to see people build model homes, super efficient, that you walk into and it explains why the house is built the way it is, what's in this house that you can't see, which is pretty much 99% of energy efficient and smart homes and all that stuff. You don't know it's there. You look at it, it looks like a plain home until the home talks to you. So we need to start doing that.
Good idea.
And that's, suppose that's a premium, then those type of homes are going to be 10 to 20% over the price of a regular home. And then if they don't know the features, they're just going to walk out.
Yeah, not necessarily. I understand what you're saying, and that's a typical. A lot of times, homes are just not built that well. You could take a home, 2 homes that are built with using the same materials. One of a person is careful about sealing it up with caulk and making sure that they do a blower door test and get all the leaks fixed, and the insulation is put in properly and all that, and it will guaranteed to perform much better than the home next door, where they just slap the insulation in and throw the drywall on. Everybody comes and goes as fast as possible. That home would probably use 20, 30, 40% more energy just because it's a leaky home. And that in and of itself, the homes are identical except for workmanship, craftsmanship.
Yeah.
You don't care.
And priority.
Realtor doesn't tell you that you won't pick the good home.
That's right.
No, that's why a lot of people buy a home and then they start comparing bills, and one home, it looks like your neighbor's home. One of them has low bills and the other one has high bills, and they think, well, you must be doing something differently. And sometimes it just comes down to how careful the builder was, or the crew you got that day that was building the home. So it's kind of, unfortunately, I guess what I'm saying is it's a luck of the draw thing, when it really should be homes should be built, tested, and you should be able to turn out homes that are almost identical in terms of efficiency, one after another, and it can be done, and we know how to do it now. It's not really happening yet, but I think those days are coming too.
Yeah.
So here's the next home. This is called a envelope home, in that its name came from this envelope that goes up, and then there's a space for air to travel down and circulate back into the bottom part of the home. And in here, sometimes they would use rock that this air would heat up down below. And so the positive opinion that these homes tended to perform well, but not because of the reason that they were designed to perform well. They performed well because they had lots of walls that were well insulated, etc. But the concept was expensive, and you could do, using some of the things that you've already seen from my homes and from the Stitt homes, that perform better and that were less expensive to build.
Yep.
One area that I didn't like was that this mass down here, there's no way that this mass, if you're walking around up here, is going to see you, or you're not going to see it. It is just warming air, which is not nearly as effective as if it is putting radiant heat, because it can see you and you can see it.
Yeah.
You know, it would start a thermal siphon when during the day the sun would heat that up on the south side, and the air would start moving up and then around by just simple circulation. I call it the convection loop. But the problem would be is that it would tend to warm up during the day, and it would tend to warm up the thermal insulation, or your thermal mass at the bottom. But at night, when you were hoping it'd keep everything warm, it would take the heat that's stored below and it would all migrate to the very top.
Right.
Yeah.
So
and here's another version of that uses some sort of a sun space to move that airflow. And then another idea that has not, although there are Ken was talking the other day about a way these can work well, but this is a cooling tube that moves cooled air into the home based upon pulling the coolness, if you will, out of the ground as the air passes through these tubes. They tend to be a little smelly. And Shauna, you actually had a home that had these, right?
I built one that I tried to use one too, and the tube was not long enough. It didn't cool the air enough, and it also drew humidity into the house. So that was my experiment with my last passive solar house. It didn't work well.
Yeah.
So just to touch on, I won't go into a lot of detail because it's kind of complicated to explain, but if you can have a heat exchanger or a heat pump, and all the cooling tubes are external to the home, just like the isolated gain solar system, passive solar Craig was talking about, if you can externalize the cooling tubes and run them over a heat exchanger of some type, then you can take advantage of the cool of the earth if it's designed correctly without having the problem of the moisture and the mildew and the smell of cave smell going into your home. You
Yeah.
leave that outdoors.
Yeah, so that airflow is isolated then from the inside of the home. Its function is to provide the heat pump with tempered air.
Tempered air, so that the extremes, if you have a heat pump that's underground and you're running air through a cooling tube, what you're doing is letting the heat pump, in essence, not be exposed to the coldest temps or the warmest temps. It's exposed to tempered
Earth's
air.
tempered temps.
Right. So maybe it never get hotter than a 100-degree day. You may never see air hotter than 80, and a 0-degree day, you may never see air colder than 25. So actually, you don't even really have to use a backup system on a heat pump that much. You get the advantages of an underground heat pump without having all the expense of an underground heat pump per se. And if you have a problem with your heat pump, you actually can go in there and repair it. Whereas if you have a problem with your loop, the thing that's
Ground
running
source.
the air, or not the air, but the water or the freon, which was the deal on the cooling coils, the copper coil one that you talked about earlier, we discussed it real quick. When you run copper tubing below grade, anything that pokes it or does anything to it, your system's done. or if somebody cuts it accidentally with a trencher or whatever. And the same problem exists if you have these poly pipes that go underneath the ground for ground contact. Yeah, if those, instead of being little copper tubes, those are flexible copper. Instead of using that, if you used a poly, I don't know if it's polyethylene, polypropylene, or what they are exactly. They're always proprietary piping for geothermal heat pump systems.
Probably PEX,
It's
PEX.
a PEX type system, yes. So bottom line is that, again, something goes wrong with it, it springs a leak, somebody puts in a fence and digs way down and hits one of them or something, your loop is now damaged. And the only thing you can do is dig it all up or start over.
Yeah.
And so it's a good idea. It's very efficient. All that makes sense. But the downside is if anything happens to it, it's kaput.
How does that relate to a geothermal setup then? Does that eliminate the problem that this has?
Are you talking about one where it goes into the pond or goes straight down?
Yes, or horizontal. I've seen both ways.
Horizontal one is the one I'm talking about. They normally put them 6 feet down, and so typically nothing should get that deep enough to nick that pipe, but there's no guarantee.
Yeah.
And if you go straight downward with a well type system, they do work well, especially if you hit a water layer, a groundwater table.
Okay.
Except that the EPA hates that people doing this because you're supposed to do it correctly. You're supposed to cap off. If you go puncture through an area where there's some groundwater that maybe somebody's using to water their garden or for drinking water, sometimes these contaminate that groundwater. So what you want to do is as you go through it, you're supposed to come back, put in the piping, and then cap off or cork with concrete or something where you penetrated it at the bottom and at the top. And it's very hard to do that.
Yeah.
Then that way you are not polluting or causing problems to that groundwater layer. So most of the time when these are dug, they just dig straight down, they put the pipe in there, they cap off the top and call it good. And then they just let dirt or chemicals or whatever seep into that groundwater. And that's the problem. That's why the EPA's, they're not big on these, but they do work well.
Yeah.
We're pointing out goods and bads here. I'm not saying that,
Yeah.
you know, if put in correctly, like everything, put in correctly, done correctly, it works gangbusters. Put in sloppily, it's a problem.
So here's
Speaking of sloppily,
here's our next topic, which is an air-to-air heat exchanger. I'm sorry, an ERV, energy recovery ventilator. Is that right, Shauna?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is a little bit of an octopus in terms of where they put it in, but it works the same way as a air-to-air heat exchanger or an HRV, heat recovery ventilator, with the difference that these are more custom made to. Where is a good shot of that? Here we go. That somewhere in here they have the ability to take moisture out that is better than an HRV. And I'll let Ken and Shauna describe the techniques for doing the ERV.
you want to take this, Shauna?
Well, okay, so I have an ERV, but I have a desiccant wheel in mine. So as my hot air goes out, it helps warm the cold air that's coming in the wintertime, and it works opposite in the summertime. So it helps cool the air that's coming in. It uses the cool air that's already in my house to help cool that air that's going out as it exchanges it. But I have the desiccant wheel, which then takes the humidity out of the air, and that's what the ERV, the energy recovery ventilator, does.
Right.
So you got the outside air that comes in, and as it comes in, it picks up the heat from the inside air and sends that into the house like an air-to-air heat exchanger does. Only the difference is if you had 80%, 85% humidity here, some of that moisture gets taken out, and rather than dumping 85% moist air into the house, now you've taken out some of the moisture, and this is less humid, what your air conditioner is trying to take out in the first place.
Right. The difference is that on an ERV, her desiccant wheel rotates very slowly. And so what's happening is it's constantly removing it. Let's use this example. you got air coming in from the outside. Let's say it's warmer outside, it's a hot, moist day outside. You've got air conditioned air you've already paid to cool inside your house going out, and then you've got warm, moist air coming in, and so your wheel that's turning in Charlotte, in Shauna's case, that moist air coming in, the desiccant, that's the same thing as those little silicone packs that you get when you buy shoes or something. It says don't eat this. Same thing. That will pick up the moisture in the incoming airstream from outside, and then it rotates into the outgoing airstream and dumps that moisture, so that you constantly have moisture being picked up as it comes in and being dumped in the outgoing airstream as it's going out. So it kind of averages the humidity, and so you have less moist air coming in than going out. And then the other system is like this. It's also an ERV, or could be. The heat exchanger core, the blue part here, this light blue in the center, number 3, that has a membrane center like house wrap, that the incoming moist air, the moisture in that air, the vapor can penetrate through the heat exchanger and equalize with the outgoing airstream. But water droplets and all, they just stay there, the incoming airstream. They do not necessarily, water can't pass through, but water vapor can. And since it's constantly taking the vapor out, you really don't need a drain. Some of them do have a drain, but technically, in theory, you're equalizing again, so moisture doesn't really drop out the bottom. Now, if you have an HRV where there's no moisture exchange, no humidity exchange between the incoming and outgoing airstream, that's when the warm, moist air coming in meets the cold, dry air going out, and it drops the moisture out, just like in your air conditioner in your furnace, and that water has to go somewhere. The condensate, it goes down a drain, just like your furnace. If you look at it in the air conditioning mode, there's water coming out of it going down a drain somewhere.
Yeah.
So same idea.
So
All this to say that we're explaining all this about air-to-air heat exchangers or ERVs to say that the biggest threat to our homes is buildup of humidity on the inside. And we want to reduce that humidity while we're bringing in fresh air, especially when we have a really well sealed up house.
Right.
So it's very easy to get it stale air. It's very easy to get humidity buildup and all those things that we just don't want. So.
And those cause the problems, especially where you don't see there's problems behind walls and things.
Right.
Ooh, okay.
So we've seen wall systems that like my 2x4, 2x2 wall, which I like, although there's better solutions now, and those better solutions are the STIT model, where they use a foam to in the ceiling and in the walls, as well as the insulated concrete panels, where you pour concrete into insulation, and that those work well. We've seen things we don't like some of the earth contact and the envelope home, but there's one type of home that we haven't talked about, and that is the SIPS panel. And I'm going to I found a neat little video that quickly describes them, and as long as it starts and works.
Energy Panel Structures, EPS, specializes in using structural insulated panels, or SIPs, for new home construction. Our structural insulated panels use high-performance rigid foam, chemically bonded to oriented strand board or plywood. This continuous bond provides incredible strength and resistance to impact. Optional electrical wire chases can be placed horizontally or vertically in the panel. Wall panels are installed over and fastened to a base plate. Assembly starts by fastening corner panels together using both interior and exterior surface studs and SIP screws. Sealant prevents air and moisture from penetrating the panel. This foam is used to seal along the bottom of the panel as well as in between each panel joint. EPS packages include pre-assembled factory insulated headers, along with window and door cutouts designed to match each custom designed home. Adjoining panels are connected using a block spline system, and approved fasteners. All EPS panels are numbered and marked. This means walls go together quickly as they tilt up and are put in place. Another major advantage of our panels over stick-built systems is that EPS panels can be manufactured up to 24 feet tall or 24 feet wide. Fabricated panels are cut to fit each project and ready to assemble. The panel edges are factory routed to accept plates and splines. EPS manufactured pre-engineered floor truss systems complete the package. SIP's roof panels can be used to create large open spans or vaulted ceilings. EPS manufactures roof trusses, which may also be used, depending on the specific home design. The EPS building system creates a superior building envelope with high thermal resistance and minimal air infiltration. Home building is complex. Worry less about the details of energy-efficient building practices. Trust EPS and our network of authorized dealers to build your once-in-a-lifetime.
Good video.
Yeah, I saw that and I said, wow, for three minutes, that's going to do a much better job than I could ever do.
Yeah.
And you notice they emphasize caulking because
Yes.
that's critical when you do SIPs. It's critical. I mean, I
Yeah.
say that twice. And they didn't talk about ventilation systems, but you almost required to have one because A, they're tight, and B, they're made out of particle board or OSB or something typically. Even plywood will delaminate if it's moist enough. So again, like Shauna said earlier, humidity control is vital in these, really in any home that's relatively tight, but especially a SIPs home.
Yeah.
Yep. And fresh air.
And fresh air is always nice, fresh filtered air.
Yes.
So we're open for any questions. That's basically the presentation, but we're happy to answer anything you've got.
This is Wayne Horlicker. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yep.
Okay. I'm in Colby, Kansas. You might know our son, Jim Horlicker, who is also tuned in this morning.
I see
Yeah.
his name here.
Yeah.
Also, my first question is, do you have a DVD available of this program that we could get so that we could show to people around Colby? Or
Even easier, Ken has created for the Heartland Renewable Energy Society a YouTube channel, and we take all of our presentations now and put them on YouTube. So as long as
And
you
on
have
our
an
website.
internet connection and a way of projecting that, or even doing your own Zoom session, you would be able to show this presentation.
You can also access them all. It'll be available on the HRES Heartland Renewable Energy Society website as well. You can either watch it on that, or you can click where it says YouTube on the bottom of any YouTube video, and it'll take you to the YouTube channel. So,
and will that be on for a certain length of time? A
probably
year?
from now on.
Yeah.
Once we get it edited and out there, it'll probably take us a week or two or three to get it edited and uploaded and working good. But within a couple of weeks, I would think we're going to have that one available, and then it'll just stay up there as long as, I guess, from now on. Huh, Greg?
Right.
Okay. Yes, that was my interest. We own an area here in Colby, Kansas that's 26 acres, pretty much in the center of town. It's not at the perimeter, at least. And our covenants call for energy efficient building. And we're down now. We built a spec house using the SIP panels and a lot of that technology. And it is sold. We only have one lot left now out of the 26 lots. So we would invite any of you folks who are coming west on Interstate 70. Interstate 70 goes right by the south edge of Colby. To stop in and we could give you a tour of the area and point out some of the features of the various houses on there. Be glad
That'd be
to do
great. Congratulations.
it.
I remember Jim talking about it a long time ago.
Yes, this has been a long project. We've owned the acreage for 40 years.
Yeah.
So it hasn't developed very quickly, but
Well, it was first used as a pasture for Jim and for our daughter and Jim's horses.
can you hear Millie? She's on a computer than I am.
She's a little soft.
Well, anyway, you can find us at 750 West Pine Street is our address in Colby. Jim can give you that too if you have his contact.
Great.
Just contact me, and I can get the Horlackers information to you.
Okay, good enough. Well,
Thanks.
thank you very much for letting us be included. Jim notified us this morning that this was going to be on, so
Well, thanks, Jim.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it very much.
All right.
All right.
All right.
We wanted to say hello, everybody.
Hi.
The 3
Thank
months
you.
old and the almost 3-year-old. We've all been listening.
That's the reason we got here to Loveland, Colorado, is because of these two little guys.
You can see him.
And your daughter?
How old is the youngest one now?
3 months.
3 months. All right.
It's good to see you.
Joanna. And so that was wonderful. We really enjoyed the presentation. Thank you, everybody, for sharing all your wealth of knowledge. It was great.
Yeah, we enjoyed being a part of it, Craig. Thank you.
Say what?
We enjoyed being a part of it and seeing it, and it was great information. And then the big treat at the end here to see the family.
Yeah.
The grandkids, yeah.
All the
The
kids.
camera to work upstairs. Besides that, there was, it was good to keep us quiet upstairs. So.
It's always good.
One of the best things about being involved in this solar, a lot of things change over time, but I used to teach solar at the Red Rock Solar Program back in the early 80s in Golden, Colorado. And the students, they'd start talking about, well, this may change, that may change. I say, yeah, but the sun angles probably won't change for 1 million or 2 million years. So it'll probably be all right designing around the sun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the one thing that has changed. That it doesn't change in my mind, but I think it's changed in the public's mind. Is, to me, passive solar is so simple, so straightforward, and why we're not using it every day is a mystery to me.
And it's
When
never
I
going
started
away.
building homes, I thought this is a ship that's never going to sink, and it sure as hell sank.
Yeah. But the sun's not going away.
So I'm
So
not going away.
We tend to listen to whoever we have in charge, and they tend to dispute or promote whatever they are into. And so we've been given different messages over the years.
Yeah. Okay, folks.
Well,
Thank you so much for coming and joining us, and we look forward to our next meeting. It's interesting that we're doing Zoom sessions now, which is a more energy efficient way of doing things. We're not driving gas from one place to the other, and it's probably a good thing. I think a lot more people are going to use Zoom rather than gasoline.
yeah, that'd be good.
I think this is a culture change.
When's your next presentation?
Probably in December.
maybe
sometime.
not till
Sometime.
maybe not till after Christmas, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe January even. It depends on. We don't have a lot of time now. You got 2 holidays in a row coming up, and not a lot of time in between. So
Yeah.
But watch for us. Thank you, everybody.
Craig will
let you
send out
know.
a notice, and it'll also be on our website once we figure that out.
Good. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you all for coming, especially Bryson and Jim Horlicker. I haven't seen your faces in a long time.
Yep.
And
to see
and so anyway, thank you very much. I guess I will sign off now.
All right.
And
Good to see you all.
God bless. Have a safe COVID-19 Thanksgiving.
Same
You
to
too.
you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Bye-bye.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Alex,
Thank you.
Bye.